Afternoon session. Now in this session we will be focusing on specifying requirements. To me this is the heart of the whole process. The morning session what we covered was that you are heading a procurement function, you are heading a supply chain function, how to develop the objectives, how to develop the policy, how to develop the vision, how to develop a mission statement. It is bigger pictures around. Now assuming that you have done all those things around, you have the right structure in place, whether matrix, centralized, decentralized, all those things have been set up. You got the right people behind you to support you. The next thing comes up is specifying requirements from where the activity starts now. And I always tell people that specifying requirement is a key thing. If specifications are not done correctly, you start with the procurement process, then after going through half the way, then you find, oh my gosh, the spec should have been changed. We need this, not this. So the time is lost. You can come back with a U-turn to the beginning, but the time is lost. When I deal with the public sector people, I tell them there is no U-turn. In the private sector, you can take a U-turn, change the specs. But in the public sector, no U-turn. Once you start, it's just like shooting a bow. It has gone. You go with the specifications, people bid for it. And if you want to change, then you have to basically cancel the whole process. While in private sector, it works. But again, it's a wastage of time. So we will be discussing in this session is how to specify the requirements, then planning for the supply. So once I know how to make the acquisitions, the next thing comes, how do I plan it? So well friend, this is what we will be focusing. So here you see, again there are 5 chapters, not like the first one. The first one was a little bigger volume, 6 chapters. Here you have 5 units. The very first unit is all about introduction. Introduction means what are the things which can be answered by purchase specs around. When we say specs, what does it answer? What does it cover? Then we are also talking about the give example of the problem which could arise if specs are not done correctly. So understanding what specs should cover. If specs is not properly defined, what it could have implication. So that's the introduction part, and let's walk through this. Okay. Rofia, you raised the hand. Should I just check up, Rofia? Hi, Rofia. Any question you have? Hi, Rofia. Okay. So what we are looking around determining the specs is determining the specification means what is required, what do we need, and then how much is required, when is it required, and the next question could also come up, where should it be delivered? Should be delivered at your premises, should be delivered at some warehouses. So we try to know around where should be delivered, how should it be transported, is it going to be sent by truck, air, sea, how is going to be the mode of transportation part, how should it be the quality tested around. So if I say I want a quality product, so what's the definition of quality? How do I assure the product is a quality product, including the service? Is the service given to me is a quality service? What other information does my supplier need? So it's a combination of all this we call as specification. So specification is not writing the specs of the goods alone. It's a combination of all this, the quantity, where, when required, the mode of transportation. That's complete package of the specs around. Not specifying your products and services correctly may lead to what? Some people say, okay, I'm done hurried, I'm under pressure, I proceed. Fine, you proceed, but then this could lead to disruption, interruptions, in the production process around. You got a wrong product. Now it's not fitting with the production line. The quality was bad. Even a simple nut and bolt, the guy might have asked for M10 and you got M8. It doesn't fit in. Or you got M10, but you got an inches size instead of metric size. It doesn't fit. The assembly line gets stuck. Second part comes the damaged and unusable inputs. You got the parts. I'm not questioning. Same name, but the dimensions are wrong. It's not fitting well. So in the process, that means the damage, unusable. So those inputs either you return back depending on the terms and conditions, or they stay with you. Using prohibited substances. You know there are some items which are banned. Some of the items which are not environmental friendly. We're using some materials which are heavy metals. Using lead, using mercury. If those type of elements are being used into manufacturing, so those are prohibited substances. So naturally that product is of no relevance. The next comes the machinery. So you have, again, you have machinery equipment breakdowns. You got the machines and equipments which is having a breakdown. Services not available when needed. So technically you're leading to something. The services are not available when you need it. You got the wrong service. Next comes what this module covers. So you will have module unit 2. Unit 1 is the introduction part. So chapter 2 is what needs to be specified. Specifying the products or services. Specifying quantity, delivery and service. And the last is the process of specifying and planning the requirements. So unit 2 is how to specify the goods and services. Unit 3, the chapter 3 is about specifying the products and services, quantity, delivery, service. And the last is how do I plan it? So the next one comes, now here what we are looking around is give examples of operationals, capitals, production, non-production requirements now. Then we'll talk about the give concrete examples of what can be specified in terms of quality, in terms of quantity, in terms of delivery, in terms of service and after sales service around to be provided to the suppliers. So this is what we'll be covering in this. Now types of requirements could be two: operational requirements, to run some machinery, to run some equipment. There are operational requirements. You got a photocopier? So photocopier is a capital part, but to run photocopiers, you need cartridges, you need papers. Those are the operational requirements. So these are required on a day-to-day basis. Then there are production requirements. If you're running a production shop, to produce something, I need steel, I need raw materials, I need aluminum sheets, I need paints, all those things around which are required to produce something. Then there are non-production things which have nothing to do with the production, but still to run the whole workshop, you need people, you need some resources around non-production requirements. Now this gives you a broad idea around the purchase specs around. So the procurement specs, when we talk around, it must cover, you can see the 5 circles around, specifying the required goods and service, specifying the quantity, specifying the delivery requirements, and then next is specifying supplier service responsiveness, and lastly is we're talking of other information needed by the suppliers. Now these elements stays relevant for all goods, services as well, and the last I would say civil works as well. So all type of goods, services, civil works, if you want to write the specs around, you must answer all these things. So the unit 3, let's talk about specifying the product and service. Now here we talk about the different types of product specifications. Now the way we write it, each one has advantages and disadvantages. The most simple thing is always give the sample. Guys, okay, here is the sample, give me as per sample. The most lazy person approach, but has many problems. So that has own advantages and disadvantages. Advantages, you give the sample to someone, tell them, guys, give me as per this. Disadvantages, the sample is lost. The way you have explained may not be correct, so those could have implications around. Then the next comes determine the most appropriate type of specs for a particular product. Depending on the type of items you're buying, what type of specs I should use. If I'm buying bolts and nuts, what? If I'm buying dresses, I'm buying shoes, what type of specs around? If I'm buying electronic items, I'm buying laptops, how do I spell it? If I'm buying table and chair, how do I spell it? So there are different ways to do different things around. The next comes know how to find out which standards exist for a product. Keep in mind that we do have international standards, local standards, national standards, European standards for every product, whether it's a goods or service. So there are international standards around. So the concept of internal standards, sometimes we try to build up our own standards. It has own benefits. Describe the technique and process of value analysis and value engineering. This tool I'm sure most of you must have done either in the business school or engineering college or everywhere. You might be from any field, I'm sure you must have done this value analysis, value engineering, which are very common. It goes back even to 70s when I went through this exercise, how to do the value analysis. And I can quote you some of the good examples which we went through. So now what we're talking around is specifying the required product and service and civil works. And the civil works is not much covered in this slide, but I can certainly talk with you what exactly need to be covered. Now purchase specs, when we're talking of the required for, we need to explain the functionality. We need to talk about the design. We need to talk about the capacity, performance, recyclability, the size of the things around, the color of the things around, durabilities, flexibility, safety requirements, conditions, labeling. Let me start with a very simple example which I started around in my careers around. We used to buy papers around. So those days we used to write paper, that's all. A4 size paper, 500 rims, 200 rims. Till we really landed up into problems. Some supplier came up, supplied the paper. Paper was the paper. It had the size A4. And you know, A4 could be American A4, could be European A4, could be Indian A4 size. So now the sizes are there, one issues. Okay, that I can understand, people understand A4 what it means. Then we mentioned white paper. Then we had a trouble around what type of white. Is it less white, more white? So one need to spell it out. You might have seen some papers when you write on the one side, other side you can see the ink even. So there's again opaqueness of the paper around. Is paper opaque or not? What type of filler material has gone into the paper around? So those are the issues around. The paper alone looks very simple. Just writing a size is not good enough. Just writing a color is not good enough. You need to define many other specifications. The thickness of the paper is also very important. So that shows a very simple items, but one need to define the functionality, the purpose, the durability part, flexibility part, the design part, the safety requirements, conditions, labeling, recyclabilities, size, color, all these things. Now again, at the bottom is a very good check. Over and under specifying are equally bad. Sometimes we become over qualifying around. What we do is we look at the catalog, take the copy of the catalog, write dot for dot, except the name of the company. So we are trying to do overqualification. So the moment you put over specifications, you are basically indirectly meaning one particular brand or supplier. So under specifying also is bad. If you say I need a vehicle, okay, 4-seater vehicle, fine. But how much is the CC of the engines? You're looking for the fuel consumptions. But if you go over part, over means you start writing around the thickness of the door wall, the handle, what type of material handle should be there, what type of the body has to be made of so and so steel or aluminium. Then we are really getting into more micro details. But if you're given the functional part, what do you want this car to do? How much mileage it should give you? How much seat it should give you? How much leg space it should give you? How much noise level it should give you? What type of conditioning, air conditioning it should do it? I think it serves the function part, the performance part. Then regard to quality, then there are standards around. So the quality standards could be defined that this product should conform to so and so. Now let's go down to the product part, the goods part. Brand and trade name. It's a very common, people buying just brand name basically. They'll say Dell, laptop, or equivalent. Sometimes they won't write the word equivalent, they say Dell brand. In the private sector you can survive, but in the public sectors, just writing Dell alone is not good enough. But then you are giving a favorism to one. It's not a fair competitions. I remember a case when we were writing laptop and then we put down the Pentium 4. Even just because the Pentium 4, we had an objection from a supplier. He said, why Pentium 4? So you can imagine these are the issues around one need to look around brand, trade names. If you are using a brand name, we try to use the word R equivalent until you have made up your mind. This is the standard in the office and we are going to stay with one brand. Yes. You say, okay, I have standardized on this model of a car, this model of this, then it's fine. Then for some of the material, we have the codes around, industry codes around. Whether it's a cement, whether it's a steel, whether it's many of the materials around, there are industry codes around. So if you spell out the industry codes, then every supplier understands this product should conform to so and so code. Samples. As I said in the beginning, some people may use samples. Like say you are buying, I remember we used to buy the dresses for the peacekeeping people in different part of the world. So if you give the sample of the shoes and the dress, that's again a lazy person approach. So we were normally encouraging people to write the complete specification, what type of material this has to be used around, what type of thread has to be used around, what is going to be the color of the shirts around. And the color also has to be given international code numbers. Another count technical specs. Some items are very technical. They are made as per your drawing. They are made as per your engineering concepts around. So naturally, you will say, I want this to be made of so and so. So and so stainless steel. Stainless steel should be 306, 314, 306, S and those with the minimum sulfur around. You spell it out the technical part. Composition specs mean you're trying to give the composition of the raw material. I want so much of aluminium, so much of sulfur, so much of this, and the composition should be like this. Lastly, the functional performance specs. The most common methodology which we encourage people to go for functional and performance specs around. So I know there are many choices available around, but the last one, the functional performance specs, goes long way that you spell it out, the function part of it, and tell us the performance part. If I'm buying a mixie, I'll say, what is the function of the mixie? Purpose is so and so. Then the performance, you'll say it should grind so much of meat, it should do grinding of this, it should grind my masalas in so many times, so many hours. That's the performance specs. If I'm doing grinding for half an hour, the machine should not get heated up. So you are providing the performance specs. So once you get the performance specs and the quality requirements, I think that covers a lot. Any question, let me know quickly. Now here comes again the explanation which I have given you earlier, the brand and the trade names. Obviously, when used, most commonly used products services like cars, computers, you will, but again in the public sector, we will write always whatever brand you say are equivalent. That means people having equivalent product can also bid for it. When the product is patented. If the product is patented, there's no other choice. Obviously, there's clarity there, advantage-wise, easy to use, quality can generally be relied on. Disadvantage is more expensive, competition is restricted, the supplier may change the underlying specification. Now here come the supplier industry codes around. Now there are coding systems for supplier for simple items. If you want to buy from some particular supplier over the internet, it's good to have either supplier code. I'm sure those of you are used to e-commerce. You pick up the items, you put the item into the cart, it has a code number. Now people are coming with the international universal code which is called UNSPSC, United Nations Standard Product and Services Code. And this is a code which I worked on it from the very day one when we implemented in the UN. Disadvantages are similar to those of the brand names. And the next one is, the moment like a brand name you are buying from X company. Similarly, if I give a supplier code, that means this belongs to X and Y supplier. Usually insufficient, they are not detailed on just one line, that's why they're samples. We use the word samples, as I told you, example of dress, shoes, even the carpet you want to buy around, give a sample piece. So these are used which are difficult to describe the product. For example, molded, irregular, special design. When you want needed to ensure suitability for a specific purpose. Advantages of sample is allows supplier to easily understand what is required because you are given a sample to the guy. Allows the buyer to assess the suitability. But disadvantage is that you have to very much ensure that the item which is supplied matches with the sample. Small deviations from the sample can be difficult to determine. Sometimes if sample is lost, then you are also having a difficulty whether the supplies are matching with your expectation. Next come technical specs, as I told you, when we write down a specific gear, specific something, specific door, you say, okay, here is the dimension of this, here is the material, here is the thickness, and you make it for me. So when they need to be highly prescriptive, physical characteristics, tolerances, materials, it is only for the complex and items around. So many companies, when they are getting the parts made, so they are very technical specs. You have engineering drawings. Very specific, easy to verify. Disadvantages require efforts and specialist expertise. So may limit the number of suppliers to supply. The risk of the supplier, the design is borne by the buyer because you are given the design. So when you give the design, you can't hold the supplier responsible for not performance. Because in the case of, if you say, this is what I'm looking for as a supplier performance-wise, performance of the product, then you can make the supplier responsible. But if you're giving an engineering drawing, diameter so-and-so, material so-and-so, thickness so-and-so, if it doesn't work, doesn't fit, it's your problem. When comes the composition part, many chemical items, many commodities, many food products, chemicals, we give a ratio, guys. This is the composition I'm looking for. So that composition becomes your list, specs. Can you think of, even we have a composition for food items. Let's say I'm buying a rice. Given the composition, the ash content should be so much. Moisture should be so much. So you spelled out that the rice will be designed as per that. The seed for the rice would be so good, it matches my requirements now. So that means everything can be converted the way you want it. So there are compositions. Even when we are buying some item, we say, okay, the salt component should not exceed this much. So you spell it out. You're getting the drugs made. In the drug also you have a compositions. That's what we call the generic drugs around. The only disadvantage is very specific and precise, easy to verify because you can check the compositions. But the disadvantage is it requires specialist expertise to develop. The verification may require testing. Next come the last one, which I said to you, very, very important, is functional and performance specs. Functional specs mean what it is supposed to do. Like say if I'm buying a car, the function of the car is to transport 4 people from this place to that place. That's a function. So there are many choices. Now to transport people, to transport my staff, to transport this, that's a function. But the performance part is very important around is how much is the mileage, how much is the noise level, how much is the life of the tires, how much is the maintenance part around. I should not be going for maintenance every month. And when do I have periodicity has to be spelled it out. Is it after 6 months? Is it after 3 months? Because that costs money. Then the color of the vehicle has to be spelled it out. Interior decoration, if you want internal part ambience, you want this way or that way, that need to be spelled it out. So there are many things. If you want a rooftop, you want something, fine, you can spell it out. You want a braking system which is motorized braking, then it's fine. So those has to be spelled out as a part of performance. So this is used more important than how it is achieved. So the focus is here. You spell it out what you want in terms of performance. Now how to achieve is left to the supplier. So can include levels and quality of outputs, capacity part, use of energy, maximum operating cost, and advantages obviously are there quite a lot. But the disadvantage I would say around is difficult to assess supplier quotations. If supplier is giving you quotation, supplier says, I agree with all your specs. They give you the cost. But when they start manufacturing it, then you have a doubt whether this guy can really meet the requirement. Because for the supplier, sometimes the minor deviation is not a major deviation. But for you, it's a major thing. So that I think is the difficulty part. Comparing suppliers' offers can be lengthy because when you've got such a complexity, so those could take time. So here gives the whole tabular form, where to use brand, where to use industry codes, where to use samples, where to use technical specs, composition, and the last functional list. So keep in mind such questions will come up. Okay, we want to buy this. What will you recommend? So those questions can come around. Or the questions could be other way around. If I'm using functional specifications, what are the possible advantage and disadvantage? They'll give you 4 advantages around. So then you have to pull out which is the most advantageous one. Out of 4, 3 may be disadvantage, 1 may be advantage. You have to pick up the one which is real advantage around. Next come, so we got those 6 categories, how to spell, how to specify. The next question comes is specifying the testing and inspection. I got the items around. How do I test it? It is meeting my expectations. I'm buying an item like surgical gloves. The guy has given me. How do I test it? Just look around physically, inspect the items. Should I test it? So the mindset goes, okay guys, what are the purpose in this one around? Surgical gloves mean it's going to be used by the doctors for before surgery. And you can imagine even if there's a small pinhole, the doctor can get AIDS if the patient is AIDS affected. And particularly if the doctor also has a cut there. So blood touch could come around. So in those situations, somebody can sue the hospital just because the wrong gloves were there. So my request to you is each and every product, we should try to spell it out international specs, which are available from ISO, International Standard Organization. They are available from European standards. They are available from DIN standard, which is the German standard. They are available from British standards. Indian standards are there for many of the items around, but some of them not been updated fully. So if you want to provide the state of art, I know if you're supplying within India, they'll say, okay, it conforms to Indian standards. But if you're looking at the international market, I think it's good to be, because today's global market, you are not making only for only the country, you're trying to export abroad. So your product should comply with international standards. The next comes, so far we talked about the goods part. The services part is the most complex. First thing is to understand the difference between service and a goods. Now I hope everybody is clear on this. The goods means anything which is tangible, anything which is transportable, physical, you can feel it, table, chair, they're all goods. Something which is not physical, something which is not tangible, like a service, I can send by email my report around, I can send by email the whole information around, that's a service part. So the service part, which is becoming a major chunk of the procurement volume, people who are doing in the software business, is all service industry. Food chain. You could say sometimes very difficult to draw the exact line. If I go to hospitalities, restaurants, the question comes in a restaurant, you're getting a food. The food is a physical food. I can touch it, I can feel it. So should I call it a goods or should I call it a service industry? So it's a combination of service and good, but technically this comes under the service industry. Because the way they serve you, the way they give you, that's a service. Hospital is also service industry. Because the doctor is only trying to cure you, either in a psychological way or by giving medicines to you, is curing you, making you healthy. So when you come out, okay, sometimes you carry with you the medicines, but technically the doctor is only giving you services, curing you, giving you prescriptions, so that's the service part. Now, should it be stated in terms of output? The time frame should be indicated. State required qualification of people around. So service specs, I think, is the most difficult one. I can quote you example when we had around 31-story building, we had to arrange the cleaning of the whole floors around. And since when we go for the bidding, how do we spell it out? What are our requirements of cleanliness? Yes, we want a clean floor. We want clean toilet. We want clean everywhere. We don't want germs and everything around. But how do we spell this out? So writing the specification, writing the requirement for service is the most difficult. You want to have security guards. How do I write the specification? What is security guard going to do? Everybody will say, every company will say, oh, I will also do this. But whether it's doing a good job or a bad job, how do I compare it? And the comparison only comes when you're able to spell it out, what exactly you are looking for, and then quantifying the measurement aspects, then you can say the product, the quality is good or bad. So this is where in the service part, you need to spell it out. Firstly, if I had to write down the service specs, firstly we'll say the bigger pictures. The preface will say, okay, this service is required for so-and-so organization, and the broad purpose is this. Then we'll spell out the deliverables. What deliverables are required from the consulting company? And after we have spelled out the deliverables, then we can go down. Next one is, okay, how do I assess it? How do I check it? And then also we'll spell it out whom this person is going to report. What inputs are going to be provided by the company? Is company providing a space for the poor guy to stand? Is the company giving some table or chair or computers to work? So there has to be clear specification. How many reports are required around? Do we need a weekly report? Do we need a daily report? So all those things need to be spelled out. And the time frame, under what period this job has to be done. Using external standards. So there are external standards around, as I said to you, ISO, EU, which need to be done. Some standards are very, very compulsory, particularly related to food. Whether you mention or not, those are compulsory. Nowadays you are hearing about Maggie. So those are the standards which are in terms of the health of the people, health of the requirements. So those are compulsory requirements around. Now here we always look for absence of pesticides, residues. Like say if you're growing fruits, vegetables in a place where we use a lot in abundance, the pesticides, those pesticides, when we spray them, they might have gone into the fruits, they might have gone to the vegetables, so they go into our body. And it could also be with the fish and marine also. So the fish, what they're taking around, it goes into them. Absence of salmonella, you know very well, and other pathogenic microorganism in processed foods. Maximum tolerable level of various, some people have this peanut problems and this problem. I think we really need to look it around on the food side. There are many standards available around. Now standards cover compositions, dimensions, performance, and testing. As I was giving you example of surgical gloves, surgical gloves could be made of a natural rubber. Then I have to give the composition of the natural rubber as a mix. Then again I have to give the dimension of the gloves, the performance of the gloves, quality of the gloves, safety of the gloves, technical requirements in terms how much tolerance is allowed. Because the thickness of the fingers in the gloves could vary from one end to another end. The tolerance has to be spelled out. Even if paper I am buying, the paper thickness also may vary around. So the technical requirements are must, testing methods. So when we talk of this, I don't want to reject somebody's product because I am following my technical testing methods. The testing method also has to be universal. Next come the standards part, advantages, disadvantages, promote competitions. So standards always helps you. If you're using international standards, everybody knows this is a product which is acceptable. So it encourages competition, it gives a level field. So that's the way around. And lead time is also cut down. You don't have to waste in time because the supplier knows very well my product conforms to so and so standard. So everyone's product is conforming to ISO standards. The variation could be there, but the minimum level they all require meets around. So making comparison become very easier. Internal standardization and external standard. So we talked about the external one, but internal could also be there. Your designers, your engineers may come up with their own design. They want the product to be unique. Nobody can develop, nobody can copy it. So that one needs to look around. Now when we standardize it, so specs development takes less time, but the price goes up. So once you standardize internally, so the price may shoot up. The next comes value analysis, value engineering. Now here comes the VA in short and value engineering. We have been given a focus, guys. We want to cut down the cost, fine. But the value analysis means we try to analyze the value. As Rajendra was talking of value earlier, portal chain. So I want to analyze the value, whether I'm really getting a value from this or not. So value analysis and value engineering. The word engineering means the moment I'm designing it, it's on the drawing board. So at the time of design board, I should look into it, the way I'm putting the design to make it. To convert the design into manufacturing, the cost may shoot up. Is it manufacturing friendly? So that's a value engineering. Value analysis means the product is already existing, but you have a nuisance. You think, oh, the cost is too high. I want to cut down the cost. That's what we call value analysis. So then you come up with the new ideas, change the model, change the material. So comes. Here I can give you my own example. One I can say we used to make fridge in Tatas in good old days under the name of Voltas. The handle used to be made of brass, chrome plated, but the cost was very high. Now question comes, why do I need brass? The brass was being used because I need to chrome plate it. Then somebody come with a material, guys, instead of brass, why not we use ABS, acrylic butadiene styrene, which is a wonderful material which can be coated with chrome, looks same finish. So when you look from far off as a customer, you don't see difference. But for the manufacturer, the price goes down. So that's what we call the VA part. Now, well, this can be categorized as what? Now, this question comes value, value, value. Are we adding any value to this? So, use values. Value could be esteem values. Sometimes you get some bag of a particular brand. You say, guys, Samsonite. It adds esteem value. Does not mean the one which are not with the brand, they're not quality. They also have a quality, but it's esteem. I have a specific brand. So the brand value comes up, the esteem figures comes up, and then exchange value also. You buy something at a higher price, but later on you can sell it at a also higher price. So reuse value is high. The loss value is also very high, and the cost value is also high. So the ratio of the function versus cost is called the value. Now coming back to the value analysis, there are 5 or 6, 7 steps around. I'll go broadly with the concept of value analysis. So the example which I told you for the handle was part of the value analysis. So let's walk through the same example in mind. Look around the first one, the preparations phase. So you feel, okay, this item is costing me very high. So define the scope and objectives. Agree on competitive advantages pursued. Determine which definition of the cost to use. You make a team, cross-function team. Because you have to carry the people around from different departments. So that's what you need to do. Information phase. I collect the performance requirements. I collect the inputs part of it. I collect the cost part of it. That's the information. Function analysis. Then I say, okay guys, let's in my case around if I'm taking a handle, why do I need copper around? The function of copper is what? Just to coat, chrome plating. Can I find some other material which can be also coated and serve the same purpose? So the function analysis is important. Speculation. So this speculation is you start analyzing yourself. Is this function necessary? Like the example I told you of handle, yes, I need a handle. Without a handle, how do I open the door? Until I give a recess into the door, front door, then I don't need a handle even. I can just pull it up. I mean, nowadays the fridge is coming around, they don't have a handle even. So the question could be asked, why do I need a handle? Why am I wasting money on this? Can I do something elsewhere around? So that's what we do around. Is its cost proportional to its usefulness? The cost which I'm putting in those days, I'm talking of 35 rupees per handle. Is it worth that much for the handle for the supplier? If the client, I can cut down the cost by 35 rupees, will client make any noise about it? So that's a way to look at it. Nowadays, if you put handle, people think it's an extra accessory. It's not even relevant. It occupies more space. It becomes too visible. So can it be sourced on less? Can I cut it from less? Can be made on done in a different way? So a very basic fundamental question, that's a speculation. Then you try to develop something, different solution, evaluate the solution. And then after evaluating the different solutions, you say choice 1, choice 2, choice 3. If I do this way, this is the way to go. And the last is implementation phase. When to use V and V? So V is used at the design stage. So when the standard design items are not available, then competition forces price down. Okay, now here comes, keep in mind, if you've done your changes at the design stage, at the concept stage, the cost saving potential is very high. But the more I move from the concept to detail to testing and production, saving potential goes down. So if any changes you have to bring, I think it's a wonderful idea to do it at the design stage. So design people should not be sitting in isolations. They should not be sitting in silos. They should be dealing directly with the manufacturers, dealing directly with the supply chain people. How this will be made? Can I change the design to make it simple? So guys, this completes our unit 3. If any issues, let me know before I proceed. I didn't see any. Okay, one question is there. Let me. Okay, no questions so far. Never mind, keep your questions ready. So I'm moving it to phase, chapter 4, you could say. Now in the unit 4, so we talked about unit 3 is specifying the goods and service, including the quality. That's the real core art. Now I have to define the quantity part, the delivery part, the service part. Now how do I define the quantity? Do I need 10 pieces? Do I need 20 pieces? And there's always, if you look from the production side, there's a batch size. If I need one every time, the cost shoots up. Let's say in the case of printing, I can do printing around 100 pieces with offset printing. I can do 10 pieces. Prices are different. 100 piecing means my setup time is same. My price goes down. But if my batch is more than 1,000, I can go to offset printing. And the price could shoot down to even half, even to 1/3. So what my point of saying is, how do we define the quantity? How much should be the quantity of the buying? And when should be delivered? If I need an item after 10 days, do you need the delivery now? That means for next 9 days, the goods are going to lie down in somewhere in the warehouse, occupying space, and space mean cost. So the next question comes also on the service side. What type of service we need from the supplier? So different type of demand patterns. So we are looking at a dependent demand and independent demand. Dependent means it depends on something. You must have seen many of the things at home we buy. They're dependent on how much you earn. More you earn, you spend on those. Less money, then you don't buy those things. But then there are some independent, whether you have less money or more money. You need them for survival. So those are the basic things we all need. So that's the way it becomes independent demand, independent. Explain the main different ways of forecasting the demand. Because supply chain people or procurement people are supposed to work hand in hand along with the marketing people. So marketing people are coming every month, every week, every quarter, new forecast. And you know very well, forecast is never firm. It's changing every minute, every day. If the crops are very good, forecast shoots up. If crops are poor, the rain is less, the whole forecast goes different way. So the forecast depends on the economy of the country, forecast depends on many factors which are beyond controls around. Describe the many issues to consider when specifying delivery. So when we're looking at the delivery, what are the things we need to look around? Outline other type of informations important to the supplier that should be included in the specs. So this is broadly what we will be covering in this chapter. Well friends, let's move through this. So we can see out of the 5 circles around, so we are now going to the second circle. So then slowly we have to cover third, fourth, fifth. So once you have covered all the fifth, I think the chapter will be over. You can imagine we have spent more time on the very first one, and that's the crucial one. Now quantity part. Now, dependent demand could also be like steering wheels. If I'm in the automobile industry or I'm in a bicycle industry, every bicycle needs 2 tires. If I'm going to make 10,000 cycle, I need 20,000 tires. So those 20,000 tires are dependent demand on the bike. So all the component which goes into the productions to make the final product are the dependent demand. Independent means the major items. I need 40,000 laptops. It's an independent demand. But what goes inside the laptop is dependent on the number of laptops. So that's a dependent demand, this is independent. Now come the characteristics of demand. Every demand which you're talking at the independent level, dependent is very clear. You can just take the bill of materials, how many chips are required, how much this cover required, how much this required. You can work it out. But the independent part is the most difficult one. So the characteristic is the trend is the very first thing. Cyclic fluctuation is the second thing around. Seasonality is another one around. And random variation is one. Seasonality is all about the weather, the festivals, when Diwali comes, when Christmas comes, when any holidays comes. Obviously, those time we spend any seasonality, whether from any religion angles. So if you look at the season time, your production, your demand shoots up. Now the trend is the very first one. Question is, how do we define the trend? I have the trend from the last years. Then I try to extend the trend from the last years. Even in our own office, we try to say, okay, how many members were there last years on this? How many members were this? How many members are this? So we try to draw a trend. So keeping the same factors in mind, January 2014 and January 2015. So we try to see the trend around. Are we going up? Are we going down? Is it working well or not? So that's the trend part. Next is cyclic fluctuations. So cyclical fluctuations due to business cycles, product life cycles. Some product has lost the meaning around. So naturally those products whose relevance is lost. I'm sure you can relate many items at your home which you used to buy in the good old days, radios and this. Now how many people buy radios around? So the requirement of the radios have gone down. I remember when we were growing, I was growing up, there were so many types of radios around and we'll say, okay, this type, small, big. But now the demand is going down. So cyclic fluctuation, the life cycle, the product life cycle is gone. It could be business cycle also. Business is going through recession. Like in America, 2008 was a recession period. Europe is going through more or less similar thing in now. So there's a cyclic recession. So those cyclic things which happen in any countries around after every 6 or 7 years, luckily our GDP is going up. So in our case, cyclic fluctuation, we are going up GDP wise. So once GDP is going up, we expect the demand to go up. Seasonalities. Now seasonality means always with weathers, holidays, festivals, beginning of the years, ending of the years. So that's the way it makes it down. Random variations for which we don't have a reason, but they happen because of unforeseen reasons. So for random means random, unforeseen, something you find, some dip comes into it, a rise comes into it. So here are some of the graphs. You can see the trends. The trend could be flat, trend could be going up, trend could be down, A, B, C. Cyclic, you can see going a little bit down, then moving up. Seasonalities are like a cyclic curve, like a sine wave. Random means all the points are falling in the straight line. But then there are few points which are not falling in the straight line, they're the random points. Forecasting demands. How do I forecast? The different methods. I can go to an expert opinions. I could do market testing. I could do quantitative analysis. I could use computer-based materials planning systems. Different ways to do around. Expert opinion mean, let's say I'm expert on telecommunication. Somebody comes to me, Mr. Batra, what do you feel in telecommunication? changes are going to happen with 3G and 4G. What are the impact is going to be on different products just with the 4G coming up or 3G coming up? What type of phones will be out? What type of phones will come up? You need an expert opinion there. So there are people who are called experts. They can easily relate every activity of the government, national level and international level, on different products around. Again, there's an expert opinion. It's a guru opinion. But again, next comes the market testing. You say, guys, let me do some sample like a Nielsen survey. Let me do a survey around. So Nielsen survey, we do the survey part, we check it. We also do the market testing for the product. What are the changes bound to happen in procurement and supply chain? So every year we send a questionnaire. Many of you fill it, send to us. So we get the feel and the pulse of the market. What are the changes going to happen? What type of people they are looking for? So we have a market testing. Quantitative analysis. And last is computer-based material planning. Quantity means if I'm going to make 40,000 pieces, how many components are required, how much of this. Same thing I can do with computers, it's called MRP and those things. Expert opinions, scenarios, the Delphi, this is called Delphi techniques. So the best and the worst and the likely. Market testings, so that's the way we do it. Forecasting demand, that's a quantitative analysis, it's using the time series. Relationship also, causal relationship. Some people have built up the formulas around X is equal to A plus Y plus C. So X is the one I'm looking around, A is the constant, so the constant has to be worked it out, and Y is the another parameters. So there might be 3 or 4 parameters which could affect around. But that's what we call as causal methods. This is the one, what is the cause of this? If this increases, what is the cause of this? So build up a relationship. So there may be one, not only one, maybe hundreds of items around which could affect. We say, okay, real estate business will go up. So what are the methods which affect the real estate? Is it the government policies? Is it affect other things around? So we try to identify those all parameters, form equations, and then we say, this is the way it is, so this should be the one change will happen. It's a very mathematical way to do it. Time series also same way. Computers based systems. I don't know how many of you guys have worked on this. I think the wording is here, it's not MPR, it's MRP. So please correct it. So it's materials requirement planning. And then again MRP2 is a resource plan. I used MRP 1 and 2 both. I went through this phase. I remember in Tata's, I'm talking of in 74, 75. For every product, there are hundreds of items which goes into the bill of materials. If I want to make a mining equipment, dredging equipment, which may have 100 parts, I want to make one fridge, which may have 200 parts. Once I need one of them, and I want to make 1 million fridge, so 1 million multiplied by all the dependent demand, I have to stock them. I have to ensure that they are available. So no disruption on the supply, no delivery getting stopped around. So I have to plan it. If I do manually with the spreadsheets, impossible thing. I know many companies are doing it. Still some companies are doing it in a very manual way. But those days we had the lucky to have the computer system. So we were using materials requirement planning. Everything was going the bill of material into the computers. The moment I say I need so many of this, I want to make 2000, let's say bicycle, automatically all the component which goes into making a bicycle, it gives me the final list. Then this was all about material requirement planning, and based on that we make a production schedule around. So now MRPs 2 came up later on, where we tried to look into other resources. I mean, it's wonderful. I have said, okay, last year I made 4,000 bike. This year I want to make 10,000 bike. But do I have the resources? Do I have the sufficient machines? Do I have sufficient people? So that's what it comes to MRP2. Then come the next one, distribution, resource planning, and last is ERP. So all the young people who are now I mean, those who are growing with ERPs, I'm sure many of you must have used it. I started implementing ERP in 2006. So I was involved in implementing ERP worldwide for the UN family, and literally I would say around 160 countries implementing worldwide on the procurement and supply chain system. So it's a great experience. But now I find it's becoming like a dinosaur. So, so you guys all the time have to keep it updated. What is the new in the market? I think we'll be doing one session we are doing on 26th, a webinar on P2P. So those of you who are interested, may please join us for P2P. So that's where we'll be covering around ERP, P2P, S2C. We'll be touching on all those things around. Then come the time series. I think you know very well, I'm sure in the school stage, college stage, you must have done this, dotting down the dots, then between the dots finding the straight lines. That's what we call the best fit. Moving straight averages, weighted averages, and causal methods. So the causal method means I'm giving a relationship between variable and outcomes. If this is the varying things around, if people's salary goes 10% up, country's GDP goes 20% up, how is going to be the impact on my product? You know very well the taste of the people around. The first salary when the increase goes up, what is going to be the first thing they're going to buy? So that's, I mean, those product market will certainly go up around. So the marketing people are trained to build up the relationship. But you should not forget around when marketing people are giving you, you also need to know how is it impacting your procurement. So the first thing in the process of projecting demand, collecting, analyzing the data, but keep in mind data is not very clean all the time. It could be distorted data around. So we need to clean it because the garbage in, garbage out. So you need to clean the data around. That's the very first thing. Second is adding the deterministic overrides. Price may go up. Now that your headquarters is saying, guys, we are going to make 1 million fridge, fine. Last year we made 50,000 or 500,000. From 500,000 we are moving it to double 1 million. Great ideas. But then they are also asking you, price has to be down. Is it practical for you? Can you get the same price? Can you get the lower price just because the volume has gone up? The raw material prices might have gone up. So when you go back with the details to the management, sorry guys, I can't cut down the price now. But the marketing people have done the forecast based on the old price. And if you guys tell them on the procurement side, sorry, I can't cut the price is going to be 10% up. So the whole forecast of marketing people is going to be wrong. Phase 3 is the management actions. Process of projecting demands. So here you have to really sit down as the managers, work it out. How was the trend last previous years? So that's where you need to work it out. The order, this is another thing around. I mean, I would say it's very interesting. When you're getting things made, there's always a batch size. So the batch size means, how does it look like? If I place an order of 10, it's the same X price. If I place an order of 15, it's a different size. But there's a word called EOQ. So EOQ means economic order quantity. So those of you who have learned this in economics, so there's a supply line, there's a demand line. The place where the supply and demand merges, that's what we call as economic order quantity. So there is a place, if you have more inventories, there's a cost of holding inventories. So if you have got a bigger batch, your cost of ordering goes down. So that's where we need to work it out, economic order quantity. Another model is stock replenishment system. Very common if I'm working in a company like I'm in what you call retail business. Stock is going out, is selling. My computer system will say, oh guys, you had a minimum level of 10 pieces. There are 40 creams lying there, 40 Nivea creams, out of which 10 is the minimum size, 30 have been sold off. So moment I reach 30, 10, a new order has to be sent for 30 more pieces. So all the time this has to be filled up. The minimum level is decided based on how much time it needs to get from zero level to that. So that's why sometimes minimum level is kept. Let's say if I got 80 pieces of Nivea cream, 70 has been sold off, I'm left up with 10. And if those 10 goes up in 4 days and same number of days are required to replenish it, I don't want this to be empty shelves. If it's empty shelf, means I lose the clients. So then this is the stock replenishment system. But again, it's a mathematics stock replenishment. It could happen, the market has gone up and your all stock is gone within 1 day instead of 4 days. So you need a periodic review of replenishment system. That's why you must have seen many of the places people are counting every day how many pieces are left. And this is where the whole RFID is coming into pictures. I know people are using barcodings, but barcoding is getting out of the way. RFID, the prices have gone down a lot, so people are moving into RFID. Next comes order quantity versus delivery quantity. One orders with various scheduled deliveries. So you have one order. You don't want to make an order for every item around. The cost is too high. Cost of processing a purchase order from A to Z is also very high. So you want to have a long-term arrangements. You want to have a call-off contracts. You have a framework agreements. You have a blanket contract. You say, guys, okay, here is the order for the whole year, but you deliver me in a staggered way. Prices are fixed. That's the way to go on. Now specifying the delivery. So we worked out the quantity part. Now we come to delivery part. When and where something is needed. The lead time available to the supplier, reinforced through contractual terms. Point of delivery, where do you want this to be delivered? That need to be spelled as well. Transport, packing, nature of packing. Here I would say, I know when we come to the little later modules around, we'll be talking of Incoterms. International commerce terms, which covers your shipping part. How do we ship it? How do we transport it? How do we pack it? So those are the one which comes into that. So I think international commerce terms, which can also be used, I know the word is international, but does not mean from 2010, the new commerce terms covers both for domestic and international sales around. Specifying supplier service and responsiveness. Specifying supplier service and responsiveness, what type of level of service you need around. Technical supports you need around. Maintenance and repairs you need around. So all that factors need to be spread. Other informations, contact informations, basis for evaluating, legislation, policies, background informations. Okay guys, this leads us to the last chapters. Any questions? Otherwise, you can hold it till the last. So soon we'll be covering up with Q&A. Okay, now we move to the next ones. So Unit 5, what it covers. Describe what the role should be for the procurement and supply functions. Main issues involved in budgeting. How do we budget it? How can this serve as an important element of supply planning? Formulate and prioritize supply targets that are aligned with corporate targets. Identify the approaches for using specifications. And describe the process of requisitions. What is the process of requisitions? And authorization. Who approves it? Who makes the requisition? That's what we'll cover. Urgent requirements. Suppose sometimes you are not involved in procurement supply. Nobody consults you. They just send you urgent, urgent, urgent. They write down the specification. That leads to restricted specification, expensive customized parts, sourcing becomes difficult, over specifying. So this is where we want procurement and supply chain people to work very hand in hand along with the customers around. If you're not working hand in hand, then you are going to be under pressure all the time. That could lead to such things. How it should work? The way I told you, they should be involved early. Specifying should involve interactions. It should be cross-functional process. That's where we will look at. Taking account of the needs of the users, consumers, the case of machinery. So that factor should remain around. Taking account of the needs again, raw material part, transportations, because transportation also you have to look around, operating personnel you have to look around. So these factors should be built into this whenever you're placing things. Budgeting is the next thing. You got specifications, fine. Now you have to budget it. I'm sitting on the customer side. I don't know what it's going to cost me. I want to have some X machine. I go to procurement people. Now guys, how much money I should budget for it? So procurement and supply chain people had to help me. How much is this going to cost me? So based on the cost given to me, I'll make a budget. So budget is nothing, a plan expressed in financial terms used to prioritize and control the work of an organization. Functional budgets are important source of planning information. Now procurement is a large part of the firm's total budgets. So this is where we need to look around. So we need to have current prices, we can look at it. Somebody, I'm buying 30 computers around. How much is it going to cost me? Normally procurement people will tell you the last year's cost from their old files around. Or sometimes they will have the latest knowledge around. So majority cases I have seen around people use the past data. But those who are really smart, who have the latest information, they know very well what is going to cost you. Negotiating prices with suppliers in advance. So budgeting, when we are doing around, budget is not the price part. Budget also should include the maintenance cost, operational cost, installation cost, all those things around. So this is why you see around two components here at the bottom, cost of acquisitions and cost of ownership. Acquisition you all know around till I get in the store. But ownership means installing, commissioning, operating, maintaining, service, and if required, even if I'm buying a software, upgrading it. It also has to come into the budget. And then after 5 years, I find this software is waste. I want to dispose it out. I know who will be the buyer for that, but then disposal part. In the case of goods, I can dispose it out. So that's where we look at the life cycle cost. So all capital items, we go through the life cycle cost, while in the other item we call total cost. So we say total costing, and this is the life cycle cost. Now comes planning. So you got the budget, you got the specs, you got everything around. Now I need to plan it. So the budgets are there. So now based on the budgets, I work on this. So planning should be a very tabular form, whichever department it is, HR department, finance department, what type of purchase they want. Somebody needs 20 computers, somebody needs 40 chairs, somebody needs something, some need some drilling machines, purpose, product, service, some wants to hire 10 consultants, some wants to organize training programs, product to service, and the code of the product. So here my request to all of you should be use international codes. Your company is a global company, so you must use UNSPSC, which is known worldwide, and then budgeted amount. So budgeted amount should be spelled out. Now setting priorities for specifying and planning is it new items. If you have bought last time, you know very well what it costs you. You have the specs, so life is easier. Analysis of purchase, purchasing this one, for specifying. Now rank purchase items in order of expenditure. Add all the expenditure for a given item. Group related items include expenditure. Include expenditure incurred by individuals. Here is the one last thing I will touch on. It is, if you look around 80-20 concepts around, I'm sure you must be knowing, all of you, 80-20 formulas around. It's a typical one companies who's buying item 1 to 186. So we have put down the top 20 items, top 20% items, high value items. In numbers they are 20%, but value wise 80%. But then below you got around 80% of the items, but value wise 20%. So that shows you that you need to focus on 20% top value item which covers 80% of the values around. So you need to rank them by expenditure. So same approach was taken up by Peter Kralzik. He said every procurement is not same. Every procurement needs a different approach around. So he didn't look only the expenditure part of 80-20, he also looked at the impact part. So by looking at the impact and the expenditures, he came up with a 2x2 matrix and then tried to work it out which item falls into which bucket. Is it a bottleneck item? Is it a leverage items? Is it a routine item? Is it a core items? Then based on that, he tried to advise which way to go. So this is the speaking of the same details around which item goes where. Like speakers are coming and the high value items in the company which is making radios, high value items, impact is also very high. So naturally the focus would be on speakers and tuning devices. See, here also it shows you give your highest priority to items that represent high level of both expenditure and impact. So that's what we call position the supplier. Now supply objectives could be ensuring right quality. I'm sure all of you know the 5 R's: right quality, right price, right quantity, right deliveries, right time. Those are the right objectives around. So these are the objectives which should be built into specs. So right quantity should be built into that. Right quality should be built into that. Right availability should be built into that. That's what you need to do. Now here comes approaches to using specs. So need for differentiation. You want your specs to be different than others. Otherwise, how do you market it? So when I look at the software in the market today, whether on P2P, e-procurements, everybody I know, I was in the workshop last 3 weeks back and the international workshop in Arizona. I would say there are about 40 companies who were, everybody was saying my product is the best. And it's very difficult to identify whose product is best. Everybody says my product does everything. So you have to have a good differentiators in the software. So that means you need to means technical specs has to be different. Performance specs has to be there around. Obviously brand name counts a lot. And then expenditure part also there. When you're going toward the brand name, your level of expenditure goes up, values and value of the standard goes up. So that's the way we look around. What can we include in the purchase spec? Certainly you will include qualities, deliveries. So the items which are there are basically same what we talked about just now. So quality has to be spelled it out, delivery has to be spelled it out, and responsiveness, what service level you need, requirements of a customer manager, you want accounts manager from them who will be dealing with you, training requirements, maintenance requirements, response time to repairs, cost targets, maximum purchase price, maximum cost of acquisitions, maximum total cost of ownership. So that's the way we look at it. Now requisition starts. Now you got all the idea about the spec, how to write the specs. So based on the specs, you make a requisition. So requisition will cover specs, requisition will cover the quantity, requisition will cover the delivery, requisition will cover where to deliver. All those things are there now, and the lead time as well. So there has to be approval process. And nowadays these are all computerized. You make a requisitions automatically system. There's a workflow. From the workflow, it goes to the next person who's authorized to approve it. So they look at it, they review it, they approve it. So there's a workflow systems. You look at ERP, you look at e-procurement. Everyone has the workflow around. So it's built into the system for approval. If it's a paper-based or electronic, minimum information is required. Paper-based could be requisitions, electronic requisitions. I would say majority company nowadays which are medium and above are moving into electronic acquisitions. So time is saved. Many of the information you can pull out. If I'm putting a vendor information, I don't have to type the whole vendor information. The moment I say IBM, it automatically pulls up the whole address. So it gives me save of time. It gives me the company's ID numbers, company this, company account. Everything is built into that. Look at the operational purchase item, the bill of materials, and then the production schedule when to be made. Low value purchases. Here again my request which I said earlier also. If items are of low values, low risk, try to use the purchasing card. I know in India still is picking up. I happen to do this exercise of implementing purchasing card. I would say 93, 94, something around. I happen to implement this. It was a wonderful experience I had those days. It's a great tool. It cuts down the cost of impress accounts. Blanket or call-off contracts, low-value order forms using petty cash. Well, friends, the journey still move on. To me, procurement and supply chain is like a journey. So we have started with the first module to understand the corporate level, the high level in terms of policy, in terms of culture. Second one, we start with the specs. So this ends this one. So in the next meeting,